to live simply with less. It's a goal that many of us have, to do away with unwanted distractions and just to be able to focus on what matters. Maybe you'd like to declutter the space that you live in, so it feels more relaxing or at least looks a bit nicer on the eye. Material possessions can often drain our mental energy and weigh heavy on us without us even realizing, even when they're out of sight. So in the pursuit of a more streamlined life and a relaxed mind, a lot of people, including myself, aim to live simply with less. So a few years ago, I fell down the YouTube rabbit hole that is minimalism. That was back in the movement's peak. Everywhere you looked, everyone was becoming a minimalist. People often spoke about the many benefits of minimalism, including increased happiness, less stress, saving money, and of course, making it a bit easier to clean. It was adopted by the masses, and maybe it's just because it was the trendy thing to do, but as somebody who got really into it, believe me when I say it really does work. So when I started to adopt this mindset and lifestyle, it started off a bit of a domino effect. My first action was to go through my wardrobe and donate any clothes which I knew that I didn't need anymore. Pretty simple, right? This then led me to going through some old items which I could then sell and make a little bit of money. But in doing this, you've basically started a chain reaction. Suddenly, as you start to address all of these different things, your life starts to be put into some kind of order. Before I knew it, going through some old clothes and selling some things on eBay had not only made my personal space a lot nicer to be in, but as a byproduct, I'd become a lot more financially conscious. I could definitely see that these smaller actions were coming together and compounding to create some really useful behaviors. Whether it's being more mindful when you're out shopping or just taking better care of your savings, suddenly your life just starts to be put into order, and for me in my mid-20s, that was very much needed. If I could summarize what this realization felt like, it would be that everything unnecessary had just been stripped back and I was left with what actually mattered. So in that respect, you just feel lighter and have a clearer mind to approach life. Now, one big issue that many people have is when they declutter their life is that items often feel sentimental. I'm certainly not immune to that. In fact, there's definitely a lot of things which I still have that a lot of people probably wouldn't understand. As a teenager, I even had an area of my bedroom dedicated to Pokemon. It was essentially a shrine. Now obviously I have grown up a little bit since then, but I do still have most of it. It's just neatly stored away. When it comes to things like this, you don't need to be a complete savage. You just need to really think about what truly matters to you. I managed to declutter to the point where I did have quite a lot of free space, and yeah, I guess to a degree I did just kind of treat myself to being able to keep a few things that are personal to me and some good memories from my childhood. So I allow myself to just make peace with the fact that I have a shoebox full of Pokemon cards and another filled with old video games. And the best thing is there is no rush, you can come back a few months later and see if you still feel sentimental about certain things. I remember thinking that I had to get rid of everything in just like one day, but that's really not the case, and you can always come back a few weeks later and see if you feel any differently. One thing that people often rarely think about is how digital clutter is still clutter. Whether it's a hard drive with no space left on it, a camera roll with thousands of photos, or a phone overflowing with apps, these things can cause a level of mental fatigue. It's often something that gets breezed over because, let's face it, it's definitely not as appealing as a perfectly designed minimalist living room. And let's be honest, most people spend half of their waking hours looking at a screen. So surely, if you're going to simplify your life, you need to address your digital life. So I would suggest that your plan of attack should be your phone, a tablet if you've got one, and a computer. So what I tend to do every couple of months or so is to take some time to go through my phone. I'll have a little look through the camera roll and delete any photos that I don't need. I'll have a look at apps as well, and if there are any that I just don't really use, I'll get rid of them as well. And then I'll look at my inboxes and delete any old messages just to try and clean things up a little bit. Then when it comes to my laptop, I'll usually start with my desktop and then my downloads folder. I know that for me personally, these are the two areas that, if left unchecked, will get pretty messy. After that, I'll have a look at my email inbox and I'll just try and get rid of as much as possible. Another good thing you can do whilst you're at it is to unsubscribe from any email lists and websites that keep bugging you. It's easy to procrastinate on this and just let them keep coming in, but yeah, if you just take the time to unsubscribe to them, you'll definitely be glad that you did. I don't know about you, but when my laptop is clean and when everything is where it should be, working on it is just a much better experience. So if I had to tell you my biggest lessons were from adopting a minimalist lifestyle, I would definitely mention a handful of things, and the first being that you really don't need to overthink it. There's an unbelievable amount of content out there all kind of saying how to live the best minimalist lifestyle, but for me it really doesn't need to be that difficult. You can just strip it back to a few essential things. For me, that's just making best use of the things that I already own. It's being more intentional about the things that I'm now bringing into my life, and then also just getting rid of any items that I don't feel are essential. And if you can do that, you're basically 99% there. When I got into it to start with, I do think I went a little bit too far and kind of based my entire personality on it, but yeah, it was easy to do because I just found it really exciting. And even as the movement isn't as trendy as it used to be, the value that you can get from it definitely still remains. And secondly, when it comes to living with less, I actually found it quite easy to get a little carried away. Sometimes I'd be looking around for things just so I could get rid of them. It almost kind of gave me a bit of a dopamine boost. It's also important to realise that just like with anything, you can definitely take things too far, and what too far looks like will of course depend on each individual person. Lastly, it's not going to fix all of your problems. I know, crazy, right? From the outside looking in, it might look like a cure to all of your problems, but in reality, it's definitely not that. For me, I kind of see it as a way that I organise my world so that I'm better placed to tackle each day. So the minimalism movement isn't as popular as it used to be, but it doesn't mean that there isn't still just as much value to be had from it. Whether it's decluttering your physical space, changing how you view consumerism, or trying to get clear on what's actually important to you, it's a really good mindset to try and explore. Looking back, I personally found that when I adopted this mindset, it helped in a few different ways. Not only could I finally get clear on what really mattered to me, but throughout all of it, I actually just enjoyed it. And sometimes it just doesn't need to be any deeper than that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.